Long time no see. This is Gary with Easy Go Junk Removal, and I have Kevin Hess on the line. And I wanted to talk to Kevin about building a culture, not just in junk removal, but any type of business, because I think it's the same process. And really looking forward to getting some nuggets from you, Kevin. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Gary, and happy late birthday.
Thank you. That's right. 66 and going strong, brother.
Hell yeah.
Yep. So, talking off air, we were kind of talking about different businesses other than the junk removal, but it applies. There is a huge difference in walking into a McDonald's or a Burger King versus In-N-Out or a Chick Filet or a Culvers. All those people have built a culture within those establishments. And no matter where you go, they seem to have put that in motion, which some places don't. You go in there and, it's kind of, this franchise may be very different than others, but Chick Filet and these places have a way of really ingraining this culture thing into their new franchises, and they're old, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. One of the things, I read Scuddamore's book on, UTF, Willing to Fail, and I was getting through it, and I heard something in it or read something in it that really stuck to me. He had built, I think it was close to $1 million a year, and he had several trucks, and he had a whole crew, and it came to his mind that, whoa, this is as far as I can go. And he let everybody go because he knew then that he had to do something that you did in Atlanta. And that was to build not just a awesome company, but a culture within that company that could expand beyond where he was sitting. He had already reached that pinnacle as far as a junk removal company and a local, but he knew where he wanted to go, and he knew to do that, he had to let go of all the cancer that was in his small business.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell me how you went about and
well, here's the
up.
thing too, with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, their corporate headquarters has amazing culture. They have meetings every day. They do a lot. It doesn't trickle down to the franchises as much as it should, because that's totally up to the I think I'm hearing an echo. But, it doesn't trickle down because the franchise owners, all franchises are different ownership. Yeah, I'm getting hearing a big echo.
I don't see it on my end.
Anyway, see if my AirPods will connect.
Bear with us, guys.
Can you hear me?
I can.
I'm still getting the echo.
Okay. Is it going to be functional or?
Yeah. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. Well, like I was saying, when it comes to culture, it trickles down from leadership, right? Brian Scudamore is an incredible leader. That's why in their corporate headquarters they have amazing culture, because culture is something that's not taught. It's caught. When you're talking about culture, your team doesn't become what you tell them to be. They become what they see. So when they see a great leader coming in on time, they're not gossiping, they're not trying to cut corners, they don't ignore customers, their team sees that, and they catch it. If you're hustling to get the job done, you're respecting your customers' homes, they're going to respect it too. It's something that, they're not memorizing your speeches, they're mirroring your habits, basically. So, and the same thing, when it comes to each individual franchise like ours, that's something that we never really had a culture. We thought we did, but that was before I developed myself into a leader. So, once I started developing myself into a leader, I started seeing that culture change, because as my habits started improving, so did everybody else's. They see everything that I do, everything down to another really, really powerful tool when it comes to culture is like recognition. I recognized all our wins, every day. I made sure to, because that recognition is fuel. Everything that gets recognized gets repeated. So you see a team member hustling, you see them, problem solving, delivering great service, I'm going to call it out. because anything that gets praised gets repeated, anything that gets recognized. And also another thing is having rituals, having that morning huddle every day. It's a non-negotiable, end of day shout outs, weekly challenges, anything small like that, as small as a fist bump, before they head out to a job, that says this is who we are and this is how we roll. You know,
Exactly.
culture is
That's
not about.
interesting. My degree's in business and management at that. And one of the things that you learn really fast in that realm is that money is one thing, but the attaboys outweigh money by leaps and bounds.
It
So
does.
every time you tell somebody, "Hey, wow, what an excellent job you did. Oh, hey, you've done this right. You've done that right." It just elevates them as a human being, and it means more to them than money. It means more than a raise. If they know they're in this and getting praised, it means something.
Yeah, especially if you do it publicly, in front of the whole team, you're shouting out somebody doing a win, maybe on a group text to the team, you're setting out the Adam, oh man, these guys just killed it at this job. They went in there expecting to do this much and they came out of there with a full truckload. Let's go, just shouting them out like that lifts them up. And then, they're going to want to repeat that because they want that attaboy again, and that's certain things that you know that's more when it comes to culture, you create that buy-in through how you lead, and it all comes down to clarity, consistency, care, and collaboration. That clarity, people, they don't follow what they don't understand, so you should be able to, they shouldn't have to guess what the standard is or what the vision is. You're going to make it simple and you're going to make it repeatable and you're going to communicate it often. That consistency, nothing destroys that buy-in faster than a moving target. I mean, if you enforce the standards constantly, have them steady, that standard is the standard at all times. And that's the team trusts that standard and they're going to follow it. If you're
You have
not
to make
consistent
goals
with
that are
it,
you have to make them where they can actually be achieved, right? You
yeah,
can't go, "Hey, this is what we want," and then the very next day, "That's not what we wanted. We wanted this." And all of a sudden, that's that moving target you're talking about.
exactly. And again, if I'm a leader and I ignore something, they're going to ignore it. That's going to be caught again. So I have to be consistent as well. And it also that buy-in also grows when people know that you care about them. It's not just about the bottom line. It's not just, do you actually see them as people? Having one-on-ones with them on a regular basis, getting to know them, letting them know that, you're going to invest in their growth both personally, professionally, giving them that feedback that helps them grow. I always believe in, I always tell my guys that I'm always going to give you honest feedback. Don't take if it's seems negative, it's not personal, it's something. If I didn't care about you, I wouldn't give you that feedback. I just let you keep going the way you're doing it. But my purpose is to help you grow with this business, so I'm always going to give you that honest feedback. And it's not about just unloading frustration on them. That care turns compliance into commitment.
Exactly. No, it's funny you used to say that because when you do give that feedback or you're, you know, admonishing, you have to give them a solution to it. And I think that's really important because it's real easy to just say, "Man, you screwed up here. What the hell's wrong with you?" There's that approach, or we didn't quite achieve the customer service that we were looking for. Let's take a look at this and then go run through it and say, "We can't do that anymore. So this is what I would like to see in this situation."
And what I
Makes a
used to
difference.
do is I would, if I would talk to something like that, I would let them tell me what they did wrong, not me
Cool.
tell them. I'd let them tell me what to do wrong and then let them tell me what they could have done to do better on that.
Right.
So giving them self accountability, they learn that and that helps them, that helps the culture grow because they're realizing that, hey, I'm holding myself accountable. That accountability is really important, and that's going to build trust between myself and my, and then the leader. And for them, it's empowering.
Yep. So let me ask you this: you're a relative new company still.
Yes.
What are you doing to ensure? Because this is something you should be putting in place. We all got names. Yours is survive. Well, you changed the whole name, didn't you?
Well, I have two different bits. I have Survivor Junk Removal, which I
Yep.
do my own junk removal, and then I
Yep.
have the Junk Evolution. Junk Evolution is actually to help other junk removal businesses.
Gotcha. Okay. So you have Survivor, and that means something, right?
Yeah.
Because of your personal story. And Easy Go, that means something. It says something right off the get go. Sonoma Strong, that says something. I know that because I'm from there, and those fires were really real back in the day, and that was the rebel call, right? Sonoma Strong, we're going to make it through. All and everybody troops haul junk. Joseph Martinez says it all means something, but that is just the first step of your business. This culture thing is something I'm really starting to look at because that is the vehicle. I love the way you put it. It's not taught, it's caught. It's like a virus. And there's good things about that when it gets, and it's rampant through your company. And that's the vehicle that's going to carry a bigger amount of success than just the name. It's kind of like, getting a website thinking that everybody's going to come to you. No, you get the website and that's where the work begins. And it's the same thing. We get these little catchy names, and they're all over the United States, actually the world, and everybody's kind of got a little cool name. But that's just the beginning, because what happens after that is going to make the difference between uh, a small success or a bigger success. And that's really what I want to talk about. How are you right now instigating these changes? Because it's going to happen eventually. You're going to hire, and that first hire has got to be the most pivotal pivotal part, because if you screw up the hiring, you screw up the culture right off the bat.
And the first step to that is understanding your own why. Why am I doing this? It's not about money. It's not about trucks, the number of jobs, actually digging deep and finding that deeper reason why I'm doing the work. You know, when it comes to a truck team member, their why might be something as simple as I need to make money, I need to feed my family and my kids. That could be as a business owner, that's your why, but you really, really want to dig deep and to really understand why you're doing this, what your purpose is. And by doing that, you create a vision that you want your business to be. And to build that into the culture, you need to communicate that vision of why it's important to you so that it becomes important to them, your team. That you want them to believe in it. It's not something you just put on a poster on a wall. This is something that they see that you believe in, and you communicate it often to your team, and they'll believe in it. And they know that there's something higher, more higher calling than just get out there and throw some junk in the back of the truck, collect some money, and go. Your team doesn't need just a paycheck; they need a purpose. Connecting to your vision and your why will help them find that, because then they start connecting to their own why.
That's really interesting. When you were saying that, the vision, right? If you're not both facing, or all your people are not facing the same uh, focal point, let's say you're facing this way and the guy you hired is facing the complete, your visions are very different. You've got to train everybody to focus on what your goals are and what your vision is. Otherwise, vision that can be strewed any way depending on which way you're looking. And you got to, I guess, would be you got to get people's attention focusing on what your purpose is.
Yeah, I mean, your team just needs a bigger picture. They need a mission that they can rally behind. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it has to be clear. I mean, do you want you know, business known for professionalism, speed, care, whatever it is, whether believing in the
All the above.
community and yeah, but you have to let them know where you're going and why it matters. So, and that's, I mean, you give that, if you don't give your team a vision, they're going to create their own. And usually that vision is, let's get through the day and go home.
And then the customer service fails. Yeah, the way you handle this stuff going out of a house can cause damage. Everything changes when you're not purposable. Everything has to be done on purpose. And if you don't have that, I love the word that you're using, clarity is really important. And I think, especially, like I'm pretty much a one man operation and I'm looking at, expanding. And especially if you are looking at bringing people on, if you don't know exactly what you want, you don't have a business plan, you don't know where you're going, we could find ourselves the same way Brian was. All of a sudden, man, you're making the money, but you're not where you want to be. You can't take the next step because you've built all these walls around this added success and you're never going to happen. And then you have to go back to ground zero. And it would really behoove all of us to start our businesses with that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, because your job as a leader is to paint that picture so clearly and so consistently that your team sees it and they feel it and they chase it with you. That's what vision is.
Yeah. No matter how, let's say you just got one truck and you got one guy, maybe two guys, and you're working that truck. Even at that, it's still important to have, because let's say one guy leaves, and if you have the right guy and you've trained him right and you've given him vision and you've actually given him which is another thing, give people responsibility, they usually rise above what you think they can do. But then when the next guy comes in, it's like, no, this is the way we do things. And let's say the new guy sticks around and the old guy, it's a rinse and repeat method, and it works over and over and over. You have to give people the ability to be themselves because we're not cookie cutter people, but that culture can survive.
Yeah.
Uh,
And strong cultures aren't built on one person's shoulders. They're built when the whole team, whether it be 1, 5, 10 people or more, it's when the whole team feels empowered to own your mission. Empowerment that's a really good connection point between leadership and culture. Because if your crew feels like they're just following orders, and your culture will always feel weak, but when they feel that they're trusted, when they feel like their ideas matter, and they actually feel ownership, that's when that culture comes alive.
they feel meaningful.
Yeah, and they feel bought into your business when being able to collaborate with you and your mission and your vision, that collaboration creates that buy-in. I mean,
Yeah, it's
it doesn't
interesting
mean,
because I like to use the word vested. When you go to work somewhere and you start, they give you like retirement or whatever. Usually it takes a certain amount of time before what they've contributed you get when you leave, meaning it takes time to be vested into something. And it's the same thing with a culture. It's the same thing with bringing people on. You want them interested in getting into the program, knowing they're going to get vested into something bigger than themselves. I think that's what you're saying, right?
yeah. I'll give you a good example. When I was with 1-800 Got Junk, every single morning we had a morning huddle. We'd talk about all our KPIs and metrics from the day before. If we hit our goals, we'd set goals for today, that day. We'd talk about, okay, we need to hit these numbers, we're going to hit these numbers, how we're going to do it. We'll do the shout outs to some of the wins from the day before and everything. And I used to hold that meeting every single morning. One morning, my I had a cold, I lost my voice, I couldn't do it. I told my guys, I said, hey, I want you to run the meeting this morning. And he's like, really? He's like, oh, okay. So he got up there and he ran that meeting, and he was so proud of himself but the engagement from the team was out of this world because they see this guy up there running this meeting and they're like, okay, this guy is our new role model. I want to be that guy now. He's up there. This guy felt so empowered by having this meeting and running this meeting and getting the guys motivated and getting out the door to take care of these jobs. That day, he probably had his best day ever out in the field because he just felt empowered. He felt like a leader, and it was a cool thing to see. After that, I never ran the morning meetings ever. I always empowered somebody else to do it, because I wanted that buy-in and, seeing that ownership just and the way it raised them. It's like, I mean, they were, oh man, that empowerment is a real powerful team.
That's
Seeing
wonderful.
your team contribute like that, empowering them to own their own results and that pride, is like, at that point, then I knew it was time to start developing leaders because seeing that empowerment and just the way it inspired them, it was a really cool thing to see.
Sure. So you're a newer company. So what are the steps that you take? The easy part again is, naming your company, getting all your, ducks in a row, get your bank accounts, etc. So here you are, you got your trailer or truck or whatever. What are the Kevin Hess's maybe 5, I don't know, maybe there's more steps that you take to automatically ensure there's a culture to your business? And I'm talking mostly, I guess, survivor junk. And so, those are the things that are going to be, injected into not only the workers, but the business.
Well, the first thing I do is when I hire somebody, the first thing I tell them is I'm not looking to hire workers or helpers. I'm looking for people that I can develop into leaders. And, for me, that is more important. Most junk removal companies, smaller home services businesses, they hire workers and helpers, and they call them workers and helpers. Them, that's already not going to be a great culture that's my opinion. It's because that's what they're going to think themselves as. I'm just a worker. So, they don't feel like they're going anywhere with this business. They might stay, they might not, depending how much money they make. But right off the bat, I want to start a culture. Even if I only have one or two guys, part-time guys helping me out, I want to start building that culture right away. And I let them know up front, that's what I'm going to be doing. You're not going to be a helper, your worker. I'm going to train you. I'm going to develop you. I'm not just going to have you in the truck as my helper and me do all the work, talking to the customers, making the phone calls, closing the jobs. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach you to do that.
You want a team member.
I want a teammate.
Yep.
I don't want an employee. I don't want a worker. I want somebody that's going to take ownership, close that job, and get praised for doing a great job at doing it.
Absolutely.
They're going to learn from day one. They're going to start training and they're going to start developing. A lot of companies don't do that. They don't even consider doing that because in their mind, they're never going to have anybody that can do it as good as they can. You've been doing this a long time. You could do it at a high level. Then you're going to have a worker that works with you forever that never learns anything. They want to be able. You want to be able to teach them because eventually, if you really want to scale your business, you're going to have to get off the truck at some point. And this is a good, start developing your team now so that you can easily step back, get off the truck and work on growing your business instead of working, you're working on that business instead of in it. And you can't do that if you never start developing people. So that's a huge, huge step is setting up that training right away. Even if you're by yourself right now, start thinking, okay, writing it down, the steps that I take in order to, how I do it so that I can teach it to somebody else. Create your own standard operating procedure, training method, whatever you want to do, but start doing that now and start day one from that first person you hire. This could be your very first employee. Start training them to be another Gary. Don't wait till a year down the road and decide, oh, I want to start growing. I want to get off the truck. Let me start now, because by then he's not gonna, he's not probably stuck at this is what I'm going to be. I'm happy with it. I don't care if I grow or not, because he hasn't felt any type of culture to begin with.
Right.
You can have a culture with just one guy, and that guy's going to stay with you forever. You mentioned Sonoma Strong. They have a great culture with their guy, Julio. He's going to be there forever, because it's not about just because Matt and JoJo are great people. Yeah, that might be part of it, but, they empower him to do more, and they trust him, and he sees that, and he'll run through a brick wall for him.
Yeah, I've interviewed him. He'll do anything for him. And that is because they have entrusted him to do more than just slopping, furniture and junk.
Exactly.
They have, they can go on vacation. Now, this is something huge, right?
Yeah.
They can go 2 weeks somewhere and Julio will run it for them. And that's worth your weight in gold. And they just brought on a second person and they're doing fantastic, right? And Matt was telling me the other day, he goes, yeah, I'm going fishing. I don't know when the last time I just said, I think I'm going to go fishing. It's that grind, but that's the difference. And I don't know how they do it because, it's not like they're reading books. They just have a natural, and again, with all the drama crap that's going on in the junk removal world, you got to separate yourself from that, and you got to surround yourself with people who actually they're not afraid of you, they're not intimidated by you, they're there to help. It's kind of like what you're saying to do with your own company, with your outside circle. And it's like what your mom used to tell you, you show me your 5 friends, I'll show you your future, right? And it's the same thing over and over and over, and we don't need all that drama crud that goes on. I listen to you, I listen to Joseph, Matt, and Joni. I have really good people that I can, hey, what do you do in this situation and that situation? Because those are the people that already been there, and they're not intimidated by me or anybody else. They've already built their shtick. Nobody's going to touch Sonoma Strong unless they want them to. They've built not just a culture, but they built a brand that is just off of the chain. And so those are the people that I look at and I go, I want to be like that. I don't want to be the guy who, speaks fire and bullcrap to people, telling them they're this or that. I want to be focused. I want to be purposeful. I want to be clear. I love that, on what I want out of my small little business. And there are people like you that are there if we need them. And all we have to do is rub shoulders. That's the powerful thing about the expo coming up. I can't wait, because the speakers last year were fantastic. The speakers this year are more fantastic, and it's just going to be off the chain. I can't wait to, and I know so many people because of Facebook, and I'm looking forward to rubbing elbows with people who know what junk removal is.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to the Junk Expo. Last year there was, a couple hundred people. I did a lot of networking. I met a lot of really good people. I've met people that have become my friends, and I talk to a lot. I collaborate with a lot of people. I've even worked with a few of them to, help train their teams, or, help them, develop operations managers.
Nice.
So that collaboration and networking was really, really powerful for me. I learned a lot from a lot of people. They were interested in learning what I had to say, and I still talk to a lot of people to this day on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Well, you've written 2 very good books, and the one right behind you, I would suggest that's a fantastic, Leading with Grit. I think people really should lean in on what it is to have grit, because, think of sandpaper, man. Think of what a little grit can do to a piece of wood. And the more grit you have it, meaning the more stuff you can do with.
And
so that
and it's
very
really
well.
important to have that grit as a blue collar leader, because when I wrote my first book, Leading with Purpose, and and I had put it out there in the Facebook, junk removal groups and everything else. One of the first questions I got was, well, what does this have to do with junk removal? Technically everything. I wrote it because this is what I used to, create a really high performing team at 1-800 Got Junk, but when most collar people, when you talk about leadership, it just, they feel like it doesn't apply to them. After that, I got that comment, I was looking up something on Google and I typed in leadership. I clicked on the images because I wanted to find an image for something. And the first thing I noticed was all the images were people in shirts and ties, sitting at a conference table, sitting in an office.
That ain't us.
And I'm like, maybe the guy's got a point. But that's why I started writing Leading with Grit, because this is leadership for the blue collar world, and that, like I said, most people doesn't think leadership applies to them in a blue collar field like junk removal. It's a really powerful tool that you would not believe could change the trajectory of your business.
Yeah, it's kind of like looking at carpenters. In the old days, carpenters, especially in like in a union shop, there's your grit. It's those incremental steps that you learn to do your trade, right? And it's the same thing. We have to learn it by just diving in. And thank God people have put, my first hot tub I ever cut up and I had to do. Thank God people put it up on the internet. That's that connection, right? But you can show somebody all you want, but you have to have the grit to start the reciprocal saw and get the right blade and go in and start actually doing it. And that's where your grit comes from. Once you get one under your belt, hey, boom. We deal with a lot of snakes out here. And, the first couple of summers, man, everywhere I step, there's a rattler. And, that can be intimidating. But then after you get used to it and stuff, you're always looking and you start developing a grit with that. You're not jumping because of the rats and all that kind of stuff. And you just have to learn how to rise above, and that is grit in itself. And it's the same thing whether you wear a tie or bib, overalls, you still have to have that tenacity. I
Yeah.
mean, without it,
And I
you
always
don't go
say
nowhere.
leadership isn't proven when the sun is shining. It's proven when the storm hits. Grit is all about resilience. It's about discipline. It's about showing up with that standard, whether the schedule is smooth and stacked with jobs, or, back to back, or you have, you're here, you got like one job for the day and it's really hard. You had two guys call out, you have to be able to be a resilient person in order to handle something like that. So when that
Yeah,
pressure is really, really on.
going into business is not for the weak. I've worked for myself for 35 years. And a lot of people think they can just walk in and start. There's so many things, there's so many facets that you really have to be mindful. You don't just do it. You don't just do it. You have to plan it. And those things are, and it's the same thing, it sounds like, with building a culture in a business, your business, I should say. And it should reflect on who you are, unless you're an asshole. And then you want to get rid of that before you build any kind of a culture, because that will, that will come through. We have not necessarily junk, but we have certain businesses around here. They have a reputation of being jerks and assholes. And it's like, why? Nobody wants to, nobody wants to deal with that. And so you lose business that way. And you might have a tight knit whatever that are able to, or willing to tolerate that type of behavior, but you're never going to grow out of it. You're never going to be bigger than what you are. You're going to just be a big asshole. Truth, right?
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, in this industry, probably the biggest enemy of most business owners is ego. It's always going to be your biggest enemy.
Yeah. You got to, my wife's brother-in-law, he does very, very well. And he told me something. We were on vacation and he goes, what really changed in my business world? And I said, no, what was it? And he says, when I figured out that I could hire smarter people than me, changed everything. And you're talking, somebody here's me and he's up on the ceiling, right? But he came to that conclusion and goes, wow, I can exponentially make my business bigger just by hiring people that can do things I can't do or actually think differently than I think and changed everything. So, well, dude, I appreciate you being on. I can't wait to meet you again over in Sonoma County. I think I told you I'm actually raised in Santa Rosa. And so that's home. That's home. So I got a couple kids out there and many, many friends that we'll be connecting with. But I'm looking forward to 2 days at the expo, meeting people that and re-meeting because last year was such a success, and I know it's going to be a huge success this time around. And I can't wait to see you, man.
Yeah, me too. It's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be a lot of
Well,
fun.
all right, sir. We appreciate you coming. Hang on tight for just a second.